I know what people want before they even know they want it. John and I are like the opposite. We always joke that like the only thing we know for sure is that we are absolutely wrong. We were spending over $1 million a month on Meta. It certainly was the reason why, the charts were continuing to go up and to the right. People ask me all the time, like, would you recommend business school? And I say no, and that's partly why I dropped out. But I need at least like half the people to say, like, would you be open to making the switch? Like 85% of people said like, absolutely not.
Sara, welcome. We're so excited to have you. For listeners, I think I have been emailing with your team for maybe 6 months to make this happen. I'm literally like, every time I'm in New York, I'm like, I'm there. Can she meet with me? So I'm really excited this is finally happening.
We made it.
But to kick off, you're a Harvard dropout. You had kind of an investing career before. Can you kind of talk us through like how you went from corporate to deciding you wanted to start your own thing and why this idea?
Yeah, my background was I was very square, I would say. I got like straight A's my whole life. I went to Harvard. I majored in economics. I did the very traditional business resume building path. So I started in investment banking at Goldman Sachs. I did management consulting at McKinsey. I was a private equity investor at Berkshire Partners. But I think through all of that, I knew in my heart of hearts that I didn't love what I was doing. I didn't love the work, and you simply just spend too many of your waking hours working to not love what you're doing. And so I decided to go back to Harvard for business school. And really the intention was to just like take a beat, right? Like to just take a breather and really have the time to figure out what it really was that I wanted to do and it's a very expensive break. I would not recommend it. People ask me all the time, like, would you recommend business school? And I say no. And that's partly why I dropped out. But I think for me, I had just been so go and reliant on these jobs and these accolades that I didn't feel comfortable just like hitting pause. And so I went to business school and I didn't know what I was looking for. And it was a really inspiring time to be at Harvard Business School. So this was 2010. And there had been a series of female founders that had come out of business school and just started businesses. So Gilt Group, Rent the Runway, Birchbox, Stitch Fix.
From Harvard Business School?
From Harvard Business School.
Okay.
Yeah. For like 1 or 2 years before me. And then the Stitch Fix founder, Katrina, she was there the same time I was. And that was just really inspiring to see. I had never considered entrepreneurship. I'd never, considered myself risk-taking in any way. But I think it was really helpful to see, oh, these are women that are just like me, and have them like demystify how they got started. So like Jenny Fleiss from Rent the Runway came back and shared how they started Rent the Runway. And it was simply like they bought all these dresses and just started like loaning them out to women in sororities and just dry cleaning them over and over again to see like how many times could you dry clean a dress, and would these women be interested in renting dresses? And I was like, light bulb went out. A light bulb went off for me when being like, I can do this. I can do this too.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like at what point did BlueLand come to be? And for listeners, can you give us like a one line on like what BlueLand is?
Yeah. So BlueLand was actually still almost 10 years later. So in business school, the light bulb went off that, hey, like maybe entrepreneurship is for me. Because I did want to be in like a fast-paced environment. I wanted to wear a lot of hats. I wanted to be learning. And I decided in my first year, like 2 months into business school, that I was going to start a business in business school. Because knowing myself, I wasn't going to be able to then like leave a high-paying corporate or finance job to take this risk, and that I had these like 2 years in business school to take this risk where I was still kind of getting credit for being in business school. And so I ended up dropping out that summer between my first and second year because I had this mobile app idea. I was able to raise some venture capital for it. And that was my first startup. It was a mobile shopping app called SnapBet. Raised, a small amount of capital, $2 million for that business, and then sold that about 3.5 years later. And that's how I got my first taste of entrepreneurship. And I mean, it was messy. I think coming out of that, I had to do it again. I felt like I had learned so much. I made so many mistakes as a first-time founder that I wanted to find a way to do it again. But at that point, I didn't have an idea. I had met these two guys who were starting a startup studio. So I ended up joining them as a founder of the startup studio called Launch. And we had this thesis. This was early, again, still like, this was like 2014 at this point, that we were still in early innings of direct to consumer. So at that point, like Warby Parker was kind of like the only example out there of D2C. And we had this thesis that we'll continue to see whole categories move direct to consumer. So yeah, after my first startup, I helped launch 4 additional startups, 1 per year through this startup studio. So I really cut my teeth launching direct to consumer brands. And then 4 years in, I became pregnant with my first son. And I just kind of started to rethink everything. Like, I think the initial energy and excitement I got from the challenge of trying to build something that had never existed before, I just, like, having done it 5 times at that point, like, that wasn't enough. And I just needed more meaning in the work that I was doing. Because at that point, I was launching a lot of fashion and beauty businesses. And inside, I was feeling like, she doesn't need another pair of shoes. She just bought a pair of shoes from us last week. She doesn't need another pair of shoes this week. Or does she need eye cream? I don't know. Is that just overpriced face cream? Does she need the toner? And so I decided to take a break and take a sabbatical, and step away from the startup studio.
And where'd you go on, or what'd you do on your sabbatical?
Yeah, I really tried my best to not do anything. I think that I was always open to my relationship with work changing on the other side of motherhood. And I think as like a woman and as a girl growing up, you're almost like told in some narratives that like, hey, like not working is actually the dream and like the end state. And so again, I was always open to like, on the other side of now having this little human that I'm wholly responsible for, will I feel differently about working, and certainly working as much as I do. And so I just wanted to like be very open to that. And I think for better or worse, I had my first son, Noah, and I realized I still love working. I still love early stage company building, but I just needed more meaning in the work that I was doing. Again, like once you have that growing family, like there is a real tangible sacrifice, right? To that time that you're going to otherwise use on that startup. So I really needed to make it count, and it just needed to be more meaningful or impactful to the world around me.
And you see that a lot actually in how, BlueLand started and still the through line now in terms of the brand that was built around it. Like I really remember engaging with the Instagram because it was so different, where you weren't talking about your products. You were just educating the customer on like how to live a more sustainable life. It was like, is a real Christmas tree or a plastic Christmas tree better? Like there was all of these references.
You go way back with that.
I go way back. And I found that strategy so interesting. So, what triggered this move into cleaning and into better cleaning? And it sounds like probably having your son, but take us through like how that came to be.
So yeah, I wasn't working at the time. I think in a lot of ways I was channeling my type A tendencies and high capacity for work into being a new mom. And I think a lot of new moms can relate to this journey of like, you're researching everything. Like you want to just like raise your newborn, your precious newborn so well. And so, in that research that included, so I breastfed exclusively for 11 months. It was like one of the hardest things I've ever done. When I was finally transitioning to formula, it felt like such a big deal. And so not only did I research the formula, but also the water that I would use to mix with the formula. I live in New York City. I was researching like, is New York City tap water even clean? Should I be using bottled water? And this is when I was horrified to learn about microplastics and how prevalent it was in both, whether it's tap water or bottled water. And unfortunately, not until this point in time, and this was like, almost 10 years ago, when no one was talking about microplastics and, there was no general awareness of microplastics, I hadn't until that point connected the dots between all the single-use plastic that we're using, how it's ending up in our environment, how it's breaking down to these tiny pieces of plastic that are too small to filter out, and now showing back up in our food, in our water, and in the formula I was making my newborn baby. From that, I just wanted to do my part. I wanted my family to be able to do our part now knowing what we knew. And so, and I had some more of that time on my hands. I ended up starting with trying to cut out all single-use plastic from our family's life, and then ended up going all the way to zero waste. And so this was a time where like the zero waste bloggers and communities were really emerging, and I was so inspired by it. I was so inspired by the idea of like, live, the world that you want, the future to be. And so we got rid of our trash can. I was using cloth diapers exclusively.
Wow.
For the first 2.5 years after having, our newborn.
Are you still zero waste?
So we are not still zero. We are very low waste. I have lots of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I think it's hard. I mean, also the context being like, I'm the CEO and I run a fast growing business. I'm also a mom of 2 children. I never want to make these things look easy. It was certainly easier because I wasn't also working and also like having an infant where they're not eating, like they're drinking milk and they're drinking breast milk, right? My 9-year-old and 5-year-old would not be okay with just eating like nuts from the bulk bins at Whole Foods or eating like seasonal local produce from the local farmers market. Like one of the few vegetables they eat are like avocado, which is neither local or seasonal, but they need to eat vegetables.
Do you have any tips for people in general, like starting to be a little more sustainable? Like what are some easy ways they can start?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big one, like, it's not any specific thing or buying any specific thing. It's just kind of slowing down and just being more conscious and intentional with the decisions you're making. And sometimes it's things that don't cost you anything. It's like you're picking up takeout, right? Or you're ordering takeout, just saying like, hey, I don't need the utensils. I don't need the ketchup. I have utensils at home. I'm going to eat this at home. Or, saying no to the pens or the swag. And just, really thinking, I think a lot of times people think like, oh, this is so inconvenient. But sometimes it's just a mindset shift, right? Of like, you take the US versus Denmark, right? The US, the average person uses 365 single-use plastic bags in a year. Denmark, on average, they use 1. But it's just like you go to the market there just isn't an option. Like if you're going to go buy something, you just have to bring your own bag, right? I think same thing with bringing your own mug or water bottle. At least for coffee, it's a little bit more work, but it's not like that much more work. So sometimes it's sort of just that shift.
Yeah, form the habit. Just like keep it with you.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, always bringing a bag. I always have bags in the back of my
Always.
car.
Yeah.
But even the mug, that's like a new habit.
Yeah.
You just start to form it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for me, it's like phone, keys, wallet, mug.
Yeah.
So going back to early days, you launched this brand and it's quite unique, at least at that time, in the sense that it's all tablets and you don't send like a finished product, right? It's the empty bottles and you mix it with water.
Yeah.
Like how did that come to be?
Yeah, so, that was, so it initially had started with like, I was zero waste, wasn't lost on me, I was doing all this work. It has no impact on the environment. As much work as I was doing, it's like, wasn't having this impact, the impact that I want to have. And so that's when I started to get this nagging feeling of like, oh, like I do have the entrepreneurial background. I do have the confidence to bring something new to market. Like, could I provide something that would make it easier for more people to access products that were free of single-use plastic? And so that was the original goal. Like, so BlueLand started with a mission way before it was a cleaning products company. Sometimes it's still funny that like I run a cleaning products company because that wasn't like the intention. And so, early days when, we thought about this goal to eliminate single-use plastic packaging, I started with toothpaste tablets. I was making toothpaste tablets for my family. I thought they were like the best. I thought everyone's going to use this because it's better for the environment. And if we can just make them as efficacious as traditional toothpaste, like boom, like everyone's going to do this.
Those never took off.
Yeah, those never took off. And I got an early read into it because I had 40 friends and family use my toothpaste tablets for 2 weeks. I did this sort of the lean startup thing where I said, I set the question in advance of like, would you make the switch? And I told myself like, I need at least like half the people to say like, would you be open to making the switch? Like open to, not even making the switch, would you be open? 85% of people said like, absolutely not. Like not open to making the switch. Like and it wasn't like really like satisfying reasons, right? But it made sense and I needed that to ground me. It was just like, I just don't want to chew my toothpaste, right? And I don't like the feeling of powder in my mouth. And as much as I'm like, come on, like do it for the planet, do it for our children. I think it was a really important early lesson that there are categories that are a lot easier to change people's behaviors. And then there are others, especially anything that goes in your mouth, touches your face, touches your hair. People are just a lot more reluctant to try a new format, try a new brand, shop on a new channel. And so I think that really anchored us as we were exploring different businesses that we could launch to serve this overarching mission.
And was it called BlueLand at this point?
Yeah, yeah. So we started with the name, and that was kind of like the project name. But yeah, the BlueLand was named before we knew we were gonna do cleaning products. And then one day I was just cleaning my son's high chair with a multi-surface cleaner that I'd made, and I was like, oh, like this is actually like mostly water. And when you think about foaming hand soap or all-purpose cleaners or spray cleaners, it's like 90% plus water. It comes in a new plastic bottle every time. And then, my mind was just turning. I was like, what if we sold people just the part they needed? And if we could remove the water, make it dry like a tablet, then maybe we could package it in paper instead of plastic. And so, yeah, that was kind of the initial light bulb moment. And we did a little more research and realized that people were definitely a lot more open to like hand soap or, their spray cleaners. Like, sure, I'll try something. It felt less risky for them.
That is such a light bulb moment because that is genius innovation. I mean, it really is. Yeah. It's such a genius. And it's crazy it didn't exist to this point.
And that's the best part. Like, I feel like when you feel like you have an idea, where I started telling people and they're like, yeah, like that makes so much sense. Like, why are we shipping around all this water? I'm like, yeah, we're shipping around 100 million gallons of water to homes that already have water at home for essentially free.
And the plastic, the reusable aspect, it's like crazy that you're going through one of those a month or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And also the cost savings for you as a brand of not having to ship water.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think, from a business perspective, there's so much there where even like you can now invest in those vessels and these bottles too, because they're meant to be used and permanent, not like single-use, cheap and disposable.
Yeah. You've now done $300 million in all-time sales and profitable for 3 years. So like, talk us through a bit of that journey from like, the second month of launching, doing several $100K to like what goes into, this is such a broad question, but then building a business that is now in like Costco and Target. Like, what do you feel like were some of the key moments or key levers in that journey?
Yeah, that is a big question. I mean, it's wild. It's wild to still like look back and think about like those early days. We were making like, we were on just BlueLand.com, making like $1,000, $2,000 a day. And I remember calculating, the investors would always tell you like, oh, real success is you have to get to 100 million of annual revenue, right? And then that goalpost changed, like you have to get 200 million of annual revenue. And then, we're doing like $5,000 a day. And I'm like, to get there, we need to be doing $500,000 of revenue per day. Yeah. Like, how are we ever going to do that? But, I think for us, we were just like really intentional and approached everything with, I think, a difference between John, my co-founder John, and myself, and sort of the stereotypical founders. Like, you definitely have the founders out there that are like, I know what people want before they even know they want it. Like, I'm a visionary and I just know. John and I are like the opposite. We always joke that like the only thing we know for sure is that we are absolutely wrong. But the good news is that we can work hard, we can listen, we can iterate, and we can get it really right. And I think that really has been an approach that has underpinned our entire journey. So like, for example, our first almost 4 years, we were really stubborn about being D2C only. We got offers from everyone. Like every dream retailer came knocking, saying they wanted to talk, saying they wanted to bring our products into stores. For us, we wanted to stay on D2C because it wasn't lost on us. This is a brand new format that these categories had never seen before. These were brand new behaviors. Like we knew, like we had a point of view on what pricing and assortment and messaging should be. But, the beauty of direct-to-consumer and selling on your own website is that sort of direct line of sight and data and relationship with your customers, so you can really iterate and refine all of those things, as well as just the product customer experience, right? Like where we are today is so far from where we had started. And I think choosing to be direct to consumer first really gave us that time to iterate in a way that had so much less risk, because you can test different messaging and you could test different pricing. And if something's not working, you could take that, you can take that PDP or piece of the website down. And it wasn't until almost 4 years in that we finally felt ready for retail. But even with retail, we took baby steps. We got an offer from Target to be the first retailer that we launched with 4 years in. And this was one of the hardest decisions we've ever made. And we've decided that we weren't ready for Target, because as we really thought about it, and we thought we wanted it, we were like, we just don't know what we don't know. We've never sold in retail, like packaging, like merchandising, fulfilling in-store inventory. That's a whole new ball game. And so we decided to not take that offer, and instead we quickly shifted and decided we want to enter Container Store, because Container Store had 90 locations versus like 2,000 locations at Target, or like 5,000 locations at Walmart. 90 doors, lower risk. They were taking in method at the same time. So it would give us a little bit of that sense of like, how do we do on shelf against competition? And we felt we weren't exactly sure what we were going to learn, but we were sure that we were going to learn a lot of things by doing that. And we did. And so we've just taken these baby steps in building retail. And Target, we actually ended up not launching cleaning until just this past year. So 2025, 6 years in, we finally launched our cleaning products in Target, and they're doing so well, right? The velocities are, beyond what their expectations were. And I can say confidently that absolutely would not have been the case had we launched any earlier, because we were benefiting from both all the lessons we learned, but also like we now have millions of customers and so much more brand awareness, that people know us, right? And we can just more effectively be able to, convert that customer that's walking through than we would have been able to early days.
I know that you guys also raised quite a lot of money in the upfront. You're a second-time founder, you're ex-Harvard, like it makes sense. But like, how do you manage investors when you're saying no to big deals like this, which also automatically means like adding 10, 20, 30 million to your annual revenue that year? Like how did you go about that shuffle?
Yeah, that shuffle sucks, right?
Yeah.
I will preface, we raised 35 million to date. I am not proud of that number. We raised seed, Series A, Series B. Our last round was $20 million. We raised that in 2021. But when we raised that, we were very explicit with any potential investors, as well as internally with our team, to hold us accountable that this would be the last round of capital that we would ever raise out of need. That, after that, like we needed to become a real sustainable business, like build an actual business that was self-sustaining and that was profitable. And I think that in itself definitely weeded out a set of investors that were like, you're a first mover, you need to just like invest and grow, grow. And, this is a multi-billion-dollar company and you take it public. For us, it came from a few different reasons. One is like at some point you need to actually like build a real business. Given that, this whole journey was born of our mission. Like our mission is really like our why, like why we're doing what we're doing. And you can't sort of make the choices that you believe are right for the business, whether from a mission and sustainability perspective or from like managing the business for like long-term health and success, if you're reliant on outside capital, right? And I did not know this then. What I do now, having, now that we're sort of 3 going on 4 years of profitability, but profitability is such a competitive advantage. Like it's everything from, me as a CEO not having to constantly be fundraising or thinking about how do I grow this business in a way so I can explain it when I have to go out and raise the next round of capital, to hiring, right? Because we are so profitable, like we can pay up for the best talent, right? And people are everything. And also, we were able to provide a lot of stability to the team that, we're proud that we've never had to do layoffs, right? Or, all the great levers of like whether you want to do more R&D, right? Whether you want to really, continue to push the bar on sustainability, whether you want to do more, exciting big brand marketing, like those things all are not real levers for you if you're not very profitable. And so it's just been life-changing to be on the other side of not having to be constantly fundraising.
A lot of brands, though, that present like you D2C forward, you see them everywhere, raise $35 million, are break even or not profitable. So what are your tips? Do you operate lean? Like, how are you profitable?
Yeah. I think you say you're going to do it and then you make it work. And I think the big piece to get profitable is you have to be crystal clear with your team that it's profitability is the priority and that growth is not on that priority list. I think where it gets really confusing and hard for founders, and especially so when you have outside investors, is like everyone's like, get profitable, but hey, like also grow and like grow, but get profitable. And it's like two sides of your mouth, and it's hard to do both well, right? And I think focus, like if a goal is really important and it's hard to achieve, like you need that focus. And so right after we raised that capital, we were crystal clear to the team, like we don't care about growth. Like we just need to get profitable, right? And that is the singular focus. That was the singular sort of like theme for the whole company. And that being aligned and clear on that helped us make some really hard decisions. So I think one of the hardest decisions that we've ever had to make in this journey and risk that we had to take was after we raised that round, we decided to cut all marketing spend.
No Meta, no Google.
No. Actually, we decided to cut all Meta spend.
Okay.
So Meta was by far our largest marketing channel. We were spending over $1 million a month on Meta. It certainly was the reason why the charts were continuing to go up and to the right. But this was post iOS 14. The targeting wasn't as good anymore. We were seeing our CACs just go up and up and up. And at some point, when you then look at the whole business with the lens of like, how do we get profitable? It's actually really easy. Like marketing is like such
Stop
a
marketing.
stop marketing, and you're like, oh, okay, like we just took a massive chunk of the cost out.
Yeah.
But in order to make a decision like that, like you have to really be confident that that's like that profitability really is
we
the
pulled
priority.
Meta for like a year or two during that time too. Just
Yeah.
straight up pulled it.
It's also not understanding your KPIs because it's like everyone thinks about that gross number that they're going to lose out on.
Yeah.
And is not thinking about the spend that's going in to achieve it. It's
Oh,
like you're still
totally.
going to have a higher bottom line because you're not spending $1 million a month.
Totally.
So it's interesting that you say it's such a different business to run when you're funding backed versus when you're not bootstrapping, but you're working towards profitability because you just have to think about your KPIs completely change. What investors care about is completely different to what you need to start caring about.
Definitely.
You almost have to forget about the $35 million you raised and just how are we going to run this?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Investors just want to see like a smooth line that's like really reassuring looking and that's up and to the right. And that's not how business works. There are some months and some years where you're going to have higher investments and costs. There's going to be some years where the growth isn't the same and super smooth month over month or year over year. But sometimes that's what's right for the brand and the business in the long run. And I think, again, like taking that new customer acquisition off for us helped us really focus the organization on how do we improve LTV, how do we improve repeat, how do we improve that customer experience, how do we improve conversion, all of that. It made us so much better at then going out and being able to spend more to acquire customers because the customers that we were able to bring in were then so much more valuable because we spent the time to optimize those other parts of the engine.
Yeah. And I just want to touch on, you talked a bit about waiting for the right time for retail and, moving away from D2C. And I saw that you guys just did a rebrand. Like, does that have to do with the fact that you guys now are appearing in retail? And so you've thought about the brand holistically and kind of, what motivated that change in branding? It can be a very scary thing to do.
Yeah, rebranding is definitely a very scary thing to do. And it was absolutely retail that was the impetus for the brand refresh that we just went through. When you look at, for example, the pouches that our tablets came in, when we first launched and we were D2C only, they were very minimal, right? Like the pouches had like, it said like BlueLand and like dishwasher detergent tablets. They didn't have to act as any kind of billboard, right? Anyone that was receiving that pouch had gone through our site experience, had already made the decision that they wanted the product. And then on the D2C experience, we were also selling and continue to sell these refillable tins. So most people were then taking the pouch and then refilling their forever tins with the pouch. Obviously a very different ball game in retail where, we don't have the benefit of a website and nice videos and, this whole immersive world where we can do the education on like, what is this new format that I've never seen before? And instead it has to not only stand on its own to really just clearly communicate like what the product is, but then it also needs to be able to like compete and stand out against all of these other massive legacy brands that are household names. And so that definitely presented a very different challenge and requirement of our packaging. And I think it's also just, growing up as a brand. I think early days, we were very focused, and you could be on niche appeal and appealing to sort of more niche customers all over the country, right? Because we were a website and you could really aggregate that demand from anywhere. Now that we're in retail stores, what success looks like is effectively converting any customer that walks by. And so I think with that, again, like you have to think about how you show up very, very differently.
How do you and your co-founder split the business?
Yeah. So my co-founder and I'm obsessed with him. I am so grateful for him like every single day or multiple times a day. I think we're really lucky because I think what we love and hate to do is very complementary and different. And so my co-founder, John, he oversees manufacturing, supply chain, product, R&D, legal, accounting, finance, and then retail. I oversee creative, brand, digital, and then our digital platforms like D2C and Amazon. So it splits really, really, really nicely.
That's really nice.
It's funny that those are the things you hate to do because you come from literally
Banking.
Banking.
I mean, that's why I had to get out of there.
Have you seen the show Industry?
No, but my husband, who's
I want
in
to know if
finance,
that's
watched.
accurate.
I think it just like it's triggering because my
gotta watch
husband's
it.
in finance and he watches it, and I'm always like, oh, like I don't
Gotta
know.
watch
It's
it.
just I'm happy to be on the other side of that.
What advice would you give to people who were creating a product that was, in a structure that was new for the customer, similar to what you did, or maybe what's that olive oil brand? What Grazia did,
Yeah.
what would your advice be if someone was really trying to change the way a consumer interacted with a product that they've been interacting with their entire life, but differently?
Yeah. I think it's like really focusing on product market fit. I would say forget about marketing, like really take that off the table. Like, you should not be hiring anyone for marketing, I think, in your first year or even 2 years, right? Because I think in the beginning, it's really about like, how do you get that product right for your target customer? And because you're doing something new, there are no proof points to assure you that what you're offering is going to best appeal to that customer that you're targeting. And I think have a lot of confidence in that you should just talk to people and iterate and get it better. I think you should kind of like throw away the notion that the idea that you have in your head, as much as you might think it's amazing for you, is going to be the thing that's most amazing for the people that you're targeting. And my toothpaste tablets are a perfect example. I still use toothpaste tablets. It's weird. I still love them. And I was convinced, and it was really helpful to get that feedback and be anchored. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, it's just me.
Yeah.
And I think, really, there are so many ways, and it doesn't have to be big and expensive, right? It's get feedback from friends and family. It's go into stores and get feedback from customers that are walking by. Early days, we did go into retail with packaging before we did this big brand refresh. And at that time, we didn't have the money to do big consumer insights work or work with an agency or do like heat mapping testing, like any of the things that we had the luxury of doing most recently. But I would just go into a retailer, bring my different packaging designs, just put them on shelf, put on like price tags, and just ask people that walk by, like, what do you think of this? Or, would also recruit people. Typically, moms from these Facebook mom groups in New York City offer a gift card for them to like meet me at these retailers out in Jersey and just like pick their brains on like what they thought. And that still can get you very, very, very far, and certainly is so much better than not doing anything. And I think by really refining and getting that product right, because it's every element of it, right? It's a shape, it's a visual, it's a material, it's the messaging, it's the pricing, it's the assortment. Getting that right is gonna, then really change the trajectory of once then you start putting the marketing dollars in. It can really make the difference of like, are you growing like this, versus are you growing in a much more steep way once you're ready
production
to do that marketing.
dollars too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Will BlueLand be working on any other categories? You mentioned toothpaste tablets, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I would be down. But are you guys going to work on anything else like that?
So
it would be great if you did the whole household.
That's my dream.
Okay.
That is my dream. I think it's on a very long timeline, though. So I would love. We will come back and do toothpaste tablets one day, and one day, like BlueLand will have built.
I'll do it.
Yeah, great. See, we'll have built enough brand equity and excitement, and we'll have done enough education with consumers broadly that they'll be ready for it.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, in the next 3 years, I mean, there's so much opportunity in cleaning. Cleaning's like a massive category. I think, 7 years in, we could have just been a laundry company. Like these are massive categories, and I think we will have more impact by staying focused and increasing penetration across more households within cleaning versus then moving into other categories. I will say that we did launch into personal care a few years ago and have since shut that down. And look, like we were doing a couple million of revenue through our body wash and our face wash. And it was the innovation. I was obsessed. I was so proud of the innovation. It was like a powder that transformed into gel when you added just water and you gave it a shake. But, when you think about, any company, but especially an emerging one, it's like limited time, limited team, limited, resources, money. Like you have to be focused, and we were going to be much better served by really focusing on cleaning and all the opportunity that we see there versus chasing personal care. At least at this point in time.
Yeah.
But one day.
It's an interesting psychology because we also interviewed one of the founders of that toilet paper company who gives
That's
a crap.
what I thought of too.
Yeah.
And they also went into personal care and it was doing a few million and they shut it down. And it's like the psychology of once you've created something that is like almost meant to like strip the home, does it work with something you put on your body?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
customers are just not ready yet.
Totally. And that was the initial insight that I had, that like there are categories, like if it touches your skin, it goes in your mouth. People are like, oh, like I'm not sure. And they just have, for each category, they have sort of their prioritized list. And those are just higher interest categories as well, which also make them harder. I think personal care and beauty, consumers are more often open to switching and trying new things in sometimes a way that's hard for an emerging brand as well, versus with cleaning, people aren't always looking to switch up their cleaning brand, which I think has also been helpful to us from a retention and a subscription perspective.
Yeah. Helpful, but also a really hard entry point.
Yes.
Because you're convincing them to leave something that they've been just not even thinking about.
Yeah.
It's
that's
like
right.
a common thing.
It's taken me a while to like, every time like I have people in town, like my mom, my mother-in-law, like they're like, want to buy me new cleaning supplies. And I'm like, this is what we use. It's like,
totally.
you have to like train the mind.
Yeah.
Do you have any D2C tool you would shout out, or Shopify tool?
One tool that has been really critical for the stage that we're in is having an attribution model in place. So we work with Lift Lab. It's like a mixed marketing model, and I think measuring the impact and the return on your marketing is so much more complex now that we're on the marketing side, not just running digital marketing. Like historically, it was just Meta and it was just like Google and it was pointing to our direct to consumer site. So you could kind of track, what did this piece of marketing do for us in terms of sales? But now we're running, a lot of out of home. We're running TV commercials, we're running podcasts, we have billboards, and then we're also, consumers are purchasing BlueLand in store. They're in Costco, in Whole Foods, in Kroger. That's like harder to track, and so it's one of those things that I don't think without like an attribution model or a partner, it's possible for a small team to really get a sense of like what's working and how are these marketing levers performing relative to one another.
Yeah. I agree.
You kind of referenced like, focusing over the next few years. You also have investors to appeal to. What's the plan? Like, what does winning look like to you?
Yeah. So I think we are very lucky that we were very intentional when we raised that last round, like the Series B. Not everyone might agree with this, but I do think that if you intend to raise multiple rounds, it is that last round that's the most important. And if you go all the way to Series B, like your seed investors just have less sway, if that makes sense. And seed investors are kind of also used to, they're making a small check very early on and don't have a lot of expectations for influencing the business. But your last set of investors will. We raised that round from Prelude. Ned and Alicia, they're fantastic. I'm obsessed with them. We took a meaningfully lower valuation to work with them versus some of the other term sheets that we got. But again, it's another one of those things. I think it's made all the difference. I think there's been so much. They were very grounded in terms of what this journey might look like, right? That it might not be just a few years and you're exiting to strategic and we're done. I think they were also very open to us wanting to do this on a much longer time frame and supporting that. And so I think having that alignment has been really helpful. And I think that's something that we're still, working through right now. I think we didn't enter this journey, for better or worse, with like that sort of dream and goal in mind. I think what we were really clear on was that we shouldn't assume that this is going to be $1 billion exit or IPO, because I think that can lead to activities like raising a lot of money that will then constrain you. And so I think we've just kind of taken this as an approach of like, let's leave all doors open. It's really hard to connect the dots forward. And it really is, because I don't think we would have predicted any of how things ended up transpiring and shaking out. And I think we would have thought, if we were at the point that we are today, we'd be like on our way to an exit because like that would be like where we are today was like the end game. Like that was like the destination, right? And now that we're here, we're like, wow, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like we are just scratching the surface. Like our household penetration is still just 2.7%. Right? As much revenue as we're doing, we have a teeny tiny household penetration. Like there's so much opportunity still ahead of us. Same thing with retailers. We're working with a very small number of retailers. We have, intentionally decided to be very focused, but at some point we're going to switch gears and be like, okay, now we want to be like everywhere. Because we do one day want to get there, but we would have never been able to predict how we feel today.
So to wrap this up, I think like listening to your story, it sounds like it just kind of goes from success to success to success, right? And that's never true.
No.
Looking back, like, can you share any of the mistakes that were made that could maybe save other people from making those mistakes?
Yeah, definitely. I think a big one is one that I already touched on, where it's just like, don't underestimate how powerful profitability is. It really is such a competitive advantage. Like what we're able to now do and the opportunities we're able to take advantage of because we're profitable, as well as, again, the talent piece is huge. The talent we're able to attract, I think, has really been transformative for the business. And I think to that end, we definitely raised more money than we needed to. I think, we grew up in a time where like funding rounds were celebrated. There was so much money out there. People were saying like, is this a bubble? And it almost felt like because it's there and because it's easy, like, shouldn't we do it? And then you can convince yourself of all the reasons why, like, taking that money is going to enable you to do bigger and better things. But I do think that you just have to remember, like, you are, then beholden to a VC, right? And you don't have control of the business, and you can't run that business again for the long run. So I think that's probably the biggest one. I think the other one is just going with a mindset of, like you said, this has not been a smooth ride at all. I feel like still maybe once a month there's something, I look at my co-founder John, and we're just like, we are so depressed, or we are so scared, and our faces are just like so like, I just feel like, very regularly you're facing these things that feel like absolutely existential. But I think going in with the mindset of like, this is normal, actually, and all you can do is, try your best to get through it and believe that you'll get on the other side. But like all the time in our journey, we thought like, okay, we're done, we're toast. Like this is not going to work.
It's a very common feeling.
Yeah. Like once a month, probably something really dramatic happens, honestly.
Yeah.
And little things every day.
I know. When I used to start saying like to friends, like, I think this is it. Like, it's done. They'd be like, you've said this like 7 times. Like, is this it? And you're like, oh yeah, I have. Okay, so we like to end on a hot take. Can be about anything. Just
Sustainability, the planet, business, anything.
My hot take is that equity isn't something that you give away. It's something that you bet on. So, the question that I get all the time is from people that are looking to start their own business is, should I bring on a co-founder? Like, I don't want to dilute my equity. I don't want to give up that much equity. And I always say, like, you're thinking about this wrong. Like, you really shouldn't be thinking about equity as a sacrifice, but really like a foundation, right? It's not something that you're losing. It's something that you're investing in, right? Like I mentioned, I'm so grateful for my co-founder, John. I would not change a thing. I'm grateful for him every single day. Like, we are the parents of BlueLand. We birthed this thing together. And I think that shared DNA of ownership, right, I think that's our biggest competitive advantage. And, the reason why I tell anyone that will let me tell them that they should get a co-founder is, there's so many high highs, there's also so many low lows, and there's so many things that you just can't talk about with your investors, you can't talk about with your team. I think, like I mentioned, it's been so helpful to have like what we love and what we hate be so amazingly different and complementary. But just having that person, like, I can call John any hour of the day, weekday, weekend. He and I know that either of us will get on a flight and go somewhere and get something done. Like, having someone that will run through fire and ice because it's also their baby is like, it's so invaluable. And so, instead of thinking about like, giving up this equity to a co-founder or to these key team members, like, I would really suggest thinking about it as like investing in the people that are going to build the business. So
I agree completely. That was so well said.
Oh, I don't know.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
We've had such a great conversation.
Thanks for
I
having
can't
me.
wait for it to air.
Yay.